when people like influencers who look amazing or are household names, you talk a lot in the book about Gwyneth Paltrow, people just believe because they're saying, okay, well, you look the way that I hope to look. So I want to eat like you. I want to treat my body the way that you do and use the products that you use. And it kind of perpetuates this cycle. I'm so excited to see you again. Since the last time I saw you, congratulations. You have a daughter. So exciting.
Thank you. I know it's been a wild ride for sure.
I can only imagine. I love kids, but yes, you have to be ready to really like sacrifice a lot, as I'm sure you now know.
Yeah. Didn't realize how much until having her, and also how much I would want to sacrifice, actually. That was the interesting part. Like, I think I always thought, I love my job, I love my work, I'll be a working mom, and yeah, I'm realizing, like, my priorities have totally shifted, and I don't care about work as much anymore, and that's an interesting thing, for someone who is
Yeah.
such a workaholic.
And you've been grinding. I mean, not only to write your first book, Anti Diet, which I absolutely loved, but now The Wellness Trap. I love it. Christy is always there to come in and just tell it like it is. And I thought what was really powerful about this book is you said for my daughter. And I think you've always had this passion for the work that you're doing. But of course, now you're even like, you are extra protective about the messaging out there as it affects everyone, but especially women. And I'm so excited because I have always thought, especially in the recent years, as I've been doing my research and healing and recovering from my own body image and food issues, that wellness and this just idea of being healthy and doing it because it's morally good and like, okay, let's forget about weight loss, but like, what about treating yourself right? It seems like this new disguise, like diet culture is trying to get back into the club and they're coming under like a different name, wearing a different outfit, but it's all the same BS. So, where did the idea of the wellness trap even start and begin for you?
Yeah, I think it started, I mean, there's a lot of sort of roots to it for me. I think it was personal for one thing. I have multiple chronic health conditions, and many of them are the types that are targeted by wellness culture. So, like autoimmune disorders, hormonal conditions, digestive disorders, skin issues, all of these things. I think people will get targeted by wellness purveyors and providers in the wellness industry with these messages of like, heal your gut, cut out these foods, reduce inflammation. You can put these diseases into remission if you just eat the right things or avoid the right things and do our supplement protocol and this and that. When I first started struggling with these issues 20 years ago, those messages were out there, but they weren't ubiquitous like they are now. I think now there really is just this inundation of messages about these things. And then another piece of this is that, in my work as an intuitive eating coach and a journalist covering anti diet stuff and, having people come to me with questions about their healing in relationship with food, people would ask me, well, I'm trying to heal my relationship with food. I've sworn off diets. I know diets don't work, but my naturopath told me I need to heal my gut and put me on this elimination diet, or my functional medicine practitioner told me I have adrenal fatigue and that I need to do all these things. And, I'm struggling because I'm supposed to be doing this for medical reasons, but it's really challenging my relationship with food. It's, setting me back in my recovery. Like, what should I do? I think there's a lot of in the best cases, kind of early stage research that's happening in these wellness spaces and that's being then like overinterpreted. Stuff that's coming out of experiments on cells in a lab or experiments on mice or experiments on really tiny groups of people and blown out to these sort of sweeping recommendations that say everyone needs to avoid these foods or everyone needs to be dealing with their inflammation in these ways. And really, there's not great support for it in the evidence, or really, in some cases, any support. And whenever I see something like that, I think, okay, well, the fact that there's not good scientific evidence behind this and someone is potentially struggling in their relationship with food while trying to implement these protocols really says to me like the risk is not worth the reward, or the potential benefit just isn't there, especially when compared to the risk that this person is facing for their relationship with food in their body.
And something that comes to mind as you talk about it not being scientifically backed, or there's not enough information there, or going in such an extreme. I know you've talked about how celery juice is this trend, but actually, if you drink too much celery juice, you can actually have negative effects that are not great for your body. But when people like influencers who look amazing or are household names, you talk a lot in the book about Gwyneth Paltrow, people just believe because they're saying, okay, well, you look the way that I hope to look. So I want to eat like you. I want to treat my body the way that you do and use the products that you use. And it kind of perpetuates this cycle.
Yeah, it's this aspirational marketing that I think happens in every industry basically under capitalism. You have constant advertising that's using images of thin people, people who adhere to conventional Western beauty standards, usually young, able bodied, cisgender, Eurocentric kind of beauty ideals to sell all kinds of products. But I think it's all the more insidious when it comes to selling wellness products and products that are sort of aimed at supposed self care because it's like, use this product and you'll look like this person and you'll have this sort of glamour that goes along with their life. So when people held out the promise of like, just cut out these foods and you'll heal all of these disparate symptoms you're experiencing, or, follow my protocol, follow my cleanse or my detox, or do all these supplements and you'll heal yourself. That's incredibly appealing.
Thinking of fasting and supplements and juice cleanses and I don't know, red light therapy and acupuncture. Like there are so many things. And sometimes it feels overwhelming. And then I'm just like, okay, well, my Yaya is like 86 and she's kicking. And I don't think she's had kale in her life. It's like there's so many different claims. But I think then the thought is, okay, well, then what do I do? Like what is going to be, and I don't like the word healthy because I think it is for me been so toxic. I think more of like what's nutritious to eat or what's beneficial in your house. Like, how do you find the things that do work for you that aren't the wellness trap?
Yeah, I think it's such a slippery slope and it's so hard not to fall into that trap, especially in this information environment that we're in now because there's just constant information coming at us from all directions and the information that gets liked and shared and surfaced and goes viral it tends to be the sort of controversial stuff, the novelty stuff, the fear-inducing stuff that, makes people angry and upset and scared and want to take action by, buying all new products or whatever it is. So one thing you can do is just to, try to reduce your use of social media and sort of reduce the amount of information coming in about all these issues and questions and try to like not think so much about wellness because I think you can get so easily pulled down this rabbit hole of overthinking every little decision.
Something that I've been seeing everywhere is Ozempic. Influencers, celebrities, when people are drastically losing weight, that's sometimes the comment section is like, are they on Ozempic? As far as I know, this is a medicine that is supposed to be intended for people with diabetes. Correct me if I'm wrong. But because of its side effect of severe weight loss, people in general are just taking it to kind of get that effect.
Yeah, so it's a little complicated actually because like while weight loss is an off-label use for this diabetes drug Ozempic, there is now a drug that's a higher dose of the same generic drug called Wegovy that is marketed for weight loss and approved for weight loss. And that's, Novo Nordisk, the maker of the drug, is really pushing that and pushing health authorities and doctors to prescribe Wegovy for weight loss.
And that's like the cousin of Ozempic now so they were
Yeah.
like, oh, we were making major sales for weight loss. So let's just do one for weight loss is basically.
Exactly. Yeah. It has
Wow.
this off label use for weight loss that doctors are already prescribing it for. People are already discovering and trying to get their hands on it. So let's make one explicitly for weight loss that's just a higher dose of the same drug. They're both semaglutide. One is just a higher dose of semaglutide. But the issue is that Wegovy is very expensive. It's more expensive than Ozempic. And Ozempic's been around longer and is, approved by insurance for diabetes, but some people can get it off label for weight loss as well for cheaper. And so people are, taking Ozempic, I think, largely because of that, because they can't get Wegovy.
How does this injection actually cause your body to lose weight?
Yeah, so it works on or hormonal fullness. Basically, it helps with feelings of satiety and feeling like you don't need to eat. And the result of that is that people tend to not want to eat and can go long periods of time without eating and eat a lot less. And, that's the same effect that diet pills in the past have had, that other diet drugs in the past have had. They've worked on different mechanisms, but it's kind of always the same. It's an appetite suppressant, basically. And the problem with that is that, people end up with really disordered relationships with food because of it. They end up being super restrictive, not getting enough nourishment, losing large amounts of weight quickly. People who are larger bodied to start with are encouraged to do that because they're made to feel like they need to do that for their health,
Oh, I
right?
have a
And
friend whose OBGYN said you should get on Ozempic to
yeah.
them.
Yeah, no, I mean, doctors are prescribing it now though too because there's a lot of pharmaceutical industry influence actually. The majority of the doctors and researchers that I've seen quoted in media pieces about these drugs, glowing reviews of these drugs. The majority of the doctors and researchers quoted have taken a lot of money from Novo Nordisk, have been paid, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars by Novo Nordisk for consulting or for research. So I think that's really, you know, telling that there is so much pharmaceutical industry influence there. There was actually a good series of investigative reports in the UK by the Observer and the Guardian showing that Novo Nordisk has inappropriately tried to influence health policy in the UK for, getting the health service to adopt Wegovy and Ozempic, trying to, get them to prescribe them to people. So yeah, there's huge conflicts of interest, I think, in this space. And a lot of doctors who are prescribing it are, reading the research and saying, oh, it seems to be, effective for large amounts of weight loss. It seems to be safe per these short-term studies, not realizing that the drug company has paid for that research, that the drug company has, significantly influenced the cultural conversation about these drugs, and that the safety and efficacy has not been shown long term. There are significant side effects of these drugs and significant safety risks. There's actually a boxed warning on the drugs, which is the sort of most serious warning label that the FDA can give a pharmaceutical, saying that this drug carries a risk of causing thyroid tumors. And that has been found in rodents, and so it doesn't necessarily translate to humans. Rodent research doesn't always translate to humans, but the fact that the FDA thought that was enough of a risk to put a boxed warning on the drug is really significant, given that a lot of drugs, diet drugs in the past that got pulled from the market for safety problems, fen famously in the 1990s, which caused heart valve defects. There was another drug in 2020 that got pulled from the market, a weight loss drug called Belviq. Neither of those had a black box warning label on them. So the fact that this one does says to me
Wow.
that this one is even riskier. And we see, not just thyroid problems, but also pancreatic issues, kidney issues. People also tend to have higher levels of nausea, vomiting, constipation, diarrhea when they take these drugs. And, those aren't necessarily serious, but they can be, incredibly damaging to people's quality of life. And not only that, but people don't maintain weight loss on these drugs once they stop taking them. Like they can
Right.
only maintain weight loss if they take them long term. So it's
And
like setting up customers for life, really.
and you know what is so sad about all of this is there was a time for me when I would have been like, let's ride. Like, give me the thing because I will do anything to
Mhm.
be pin thin. I would love to look, you know, that type of way. Like the world has really glorified skinny to a point where people do not care that those are the side effects.
Yeah,
They're just like, well, we'll get there when we get there, but I'm going to look hot now, which I have
right.
empathy for.
Same. Yeah. I mean, especially for larger bodied people in this culture, but I think really for everyone across the weight spectrum, there's so much pressure to look and be thin and, for higher weight people to lose weight. There's so much pressure from so many corners of society and, internal pressure from all this body image stuff that we've internalized that I would have been the same, at the height of my eating disorder, I certainly would have been willing to take that risk. I was taking other risks to try to be thin. It's completely understandable why people are attracted to this kind of drug, and it's, incredibly risky, incredibly problematic, and this drug company is making money hand over fist when I think it's likely, given the track record of other diet drugs, that this will either be pulled from the market because of safety concerns in a few years, maybe 5 years, maybe less, or if not that it's gonna end up sort of not being the hot miracle ticket that it was made out to be because people are gonna potentially regain weight in the long term. People are potentially gonna have so many side effects that outweigh the benefits. The drugs are not gonna be able to be prescribed or stayed on long term. We just don't know kind of what the future holds, but I think right now there's this frenzy for them that is really understandable, again, given the culture we live in, and also unjustified given all the risks.
Do you think that the pendulum is swinging back towards the heroin chic, 90s body image look? Because I did feel like for a while there in 2021 and 2022, whether I was just on the right side of social media, there was a really big and heartwarming and exciting push for inclusivity for everyone. But now with this rise of Ozempic, we are seeing people going back to wanting to look this way, but also society, coming around to love it again. And I think that's kind of like everything in life. Things go in and out of style. And unfortunately, we've somehow made the shape of a body a trend.
I think in some corners, yes. And I think Novo Nordisk has tried to frame this, and people who've taken money from Novo Nordisk have tried to frame these drugs as the solution to weight stigma because, it shows that this isn't a matter of willpower. This is a matter of biology. And therefore, these drugs are going to help destigmatize body size. And I just think, that's a load of BS because what actually happens is they dramatically increase weight stigma when everybody's clamoring to be thin. And now it's sort of more acceptable to talk about thinness again. It's incredibly problematic. But I think, too, there is still a robust anti diet movement. There's still robust, fat positivity movement. And those things that are rooted in a more political consciousness, I think, aren't going away. People who've had their sort of minds open to that side of things may be less likely or a little more insulated from the sudden kind of trend towards super thin bodies again. Not across the board. I mean, even if you're really committed to anti diet values, but you're a larger bodied person experiencing weight stigma every single day in your life, I think it's understandable and incredibly tempting to go back to pursuing thinness via these drugs.
Mm-hmm.
There are enough people who are questioning these things and thinking critically. And I've started to see some journalists now asking questions about Novo Nordisk's influence, like these, articles coming out of the UK, but also some American journalists as well, starting to ask questions about, whether this is inappropriate and just sort of how far that influence goes. I've seen reports that, influencers on social media are being paid, and not necessarily by the company itself, but perhaps by companies that, are sort of resellers of the weight loss drugs to be like spokespeople and, document their so-called weight loss journey and things like that. And the fact that, that's coming to light and people are starting to talk about that, I think is a good thing. It can look kind of bleak sometimes, I think, but I do still have hope that this is a moment in history that will pass. This is kind of a blip. And, diet culture does tend to recirculate and try to resurface again and again. And this is just another way it's doing it.
I remember being in the throes of every fitness video and how to lose the fat between my inner thighs and what I can eat to, change the way my body looks and all the different diets I tried. And now being completely in the other direction, like to a point where I don't know about you, Christy, I feel so at peace with food in my body. Sometimes I don't even want to talk about the anti-diet stuff anymore because I have such peace in my life.
Mhm.
And sometimes I would just love to live in this bliss. But I know that the work you're doing is helping so many people. But thinking of where both of us were at one point and where we are now, and the people listening who might be where we were, what are some of the things that just keep you grounded?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of them is the amount of time and brain space that I have back from those pursuits. And I should say that is a privilege, right? To be able to get that back, to get that level of healing, to not be constantly stigmatized and shamed for the size and shape of my body, to have access to the resources for therapy and all of that stuff. Like, definitely I'm very privileged to be able to attain this, but I think it is attainable as well for many people, if not everyone, right? Because people at higher ends of the weight spectrum have more barriers to being able to attain this. And I've still seen folks who are stigmatized for their size be able to get to a place of freedom and food in their body as well.
I think just to add to what you're saying, when you talk about the privilege, it's people who are in larger bodies, they have to ask for the seatbelt extender on a plane. And that opens up a triggering experience, that opens up the judgment of others. That's an obstacle you and I don't have to face. So we have more
Mhm.
of this internal work that we feel like we can pretty much control. But as you said, and you're correct, there's a lot of people out there who face external battles every single day.
Right, and that makes it so much harder to do the internal work and to get to a place of peace because when you're constantly being, as much inner peace as you may be able to muster, and we both know how fraught of a battle and difficult of a challenge that is to begin with, then, that's like a fragile piece that you're able to get, and then you're being derailed by all these things happening from the outside, all this external stigma and pressure. So it is, more challenging, I think, the higher you go up the weight spectrum and also the more other marginalizations people have. That just adds to the difficulty, I think, of recovery. But, all that being said, I think for me, with the privileges and the sort of combination of luck and hard work that I've put together in my life, as you alluded to, sort of not wanting to think about it, just having so much space and freedom from it that I can pursue other things. And I've actually started to feel myself like I'm ready to move on a little bit. I think anti-diet work will always be a part of my life and a part of my work, but moving into talking about wellness culture and social media and sort of how that plays a role and the mis and disinformation that's spread and thinking about media literacy and just a lot of new ideas that I've been able to explore in this new book and my new podcast, like that has been really exciting for me and I think is kind of a next layer to my own recovery. I listened to your episode recently about your sort of pivot and identity shift, and I've been kind of going through some similar things since becoming a mom and thinking about how my roles and priorities are changing in my life. I think part of what drew me to the anti-diet work and to speaking out about these issues was my own recovery and the fact that, when you're new at something or newish at something and you want to really cement it, you can teach it to others or spread the word to others. And that actually helps reinforce it for you, right? That's a
Mhm.
common teaching tool in classroom settings. And I think it happens a lot with social media as well and people who become kind of influencers in these spaces because they're so fired up because of their own journey. But in a certain point, we kind of get to a place of like, okay, I've really cemented that knowledge by spreading the word to others. And now I'm ready to do something else. And I just think that's super cool, like to get to a place where you're like, what else is there that I'm curious about? What else is there that I want to pursue in my life? And I don't need this so much anymore because
Mhm.
I'm not fighting against diet culture so intensely in my own life every single day that I have the space to give to other things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. And I'm so flattered that you listen. And so many people related to that, whether they're in a similar industry where people, put them in a box or not, just times in your life when you change. And I think when it comes to wellness and diet culture and everything we're talking about today, that can become a personality. Is
Mhm.
you're the person in the family who always knows the great workouts or always has the cleanest quote recipes. And it's like, okay, well, who am I going to be if I'm not the person who's always working out and always on the fitness grind? And, that personality shift I think is major. But when you're anywhere in life where you're no longer feeling like your heart is lit on fire and it's feeling heavy and it's feeling beat up every day, that is when we have to look deep and think, yeah, is this what's best for me or not? For anyone who's thinking, okay, I don't want to subscribe to diet culture and the wellness industry, and maybe they love the cold shower, but they don't want to clean their house of any product that wasn't made organically, how do you walk the line and find balance?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think one thing is that sort of recognizing if something feels good and fun for you and it's not causing you any harm, then, that's great. That's not something I'm trying to take away from people. There's certainly scientific evidence to support like a general balanced way of eating or, intuitive eating or things like that. But when it comes to things like taking cold showers or celery juice or gut healing and the supposed, gut health diets that a lot of people are doing or whatever, you know, there's really no science behind
Wait, I thought
celery
there was a
juice.
lot of science for cold showers.
I mean, it's not long term, it's not large scale studies, it's not like the kind of science that we really want to see for clinical recommendations. It's kind of early stage, interesting for potential future reference, but not something that I think I'd recommend people basing their life decisions around, you
Yeah.
know?
My husband, Max, his showers are his sacred time. Like I always joke with
Mm.
him, I love his showers. I'll never tell him, hurry up when he's in the shower because I know he rarely gives himself anything. And that shower is his time. And I love it for him because he's always go, go, go. And there was a time where he got on the cold shower trend. And I just remember feeling like heartbroken because I was like,
Mhm.
wait, no, but you love your showers. Like that's your time. And if you're cold showering, you're rushing it because no one wants to be in a cold shower longer than 2 minutes. And then you don't get that, 5 to 7 minute shower you usually take. That's your self care mindfulness time. Whereas for me, like showers are not sacred to me in that way. And I like the cold shower because it shocks my system and it wakes me up. So, I think that's just an example of like how it might be something that helps me. But for Max, I hate to see him get on the trend and then not have his mindfulness time, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, totally. It's like it has such different functions for different people. I think of people I know who incorporate that with all kinds of other morning routine stuff where their morning routine becomes this rigid sort of straitjacket almost that they have to do everything a certain way and, it takes hours. If you have the money and the time and the space in your life to have a really long huge morning routine with lots of rituals and it feels good to you, then okay, cool. But, not everybody has that ability. And I think for a lot of people, those things can start to be really constricting and also can start to lead down paths. I mean, one of the things I cover a lot in the book is, the role social media plays in spreading mis and disinformation, as we touched on a little bit. And I think one way that that can happen is, people start searching around for information on one trend. Maybe it's celery juice, maybe it's cold showers, maybe it's whatever, dry brushing, who knows. And then from that, the algorithm pegs you as a crunchy person or a wellnessy person and starts showing you other things that wellnessy people like. And
Yeah.
suddenly you can be sort of overwhelmed with all of these things that you're quote unquote supposed to be doing, including, a lot of restrictive dietary habits, a lot of unnecessary and potentially harmful supplements. It puts you in the path of all of this misinformation or just, information that could potentially be harmful to you given, if you're in a vulnerable state. And if you get into one of these trends, maybe trying to not go down a rabbit hole of that on social media because then it's going to pull you further along into other trends that could potentially be harmful.
Yeah. And I think that rabbit hole part is the key because like people are going to be on social media or they're going to be online and you're going to come across it. So it's just catching yourself and being like, nope, not for me. I mean, the other day there was a podcast that released an episode on like, how to detoxify your entire house. And I remember
Mm.
thinking to myself, do I really want to listen to this? Or is this one week of a podcast I like that I'm going to skip because otherwise I'm going to feel like I have to burn my entire apartment and I don't have the energy, time, resources to currently, change it all up tonight when I go home from listening to this. So I think there's people I like to follow and I listen to, but then when it comes to certain things, I'm like, all right, I'm passing on this or not going down the rabbit hole on this because yeah, you have to know yourself.
Mhm.
Christy, thank you so much. It has been so great chatting with you. I always love when we get to debunk these things. Congratulations on another book. And I'm
Thank
sure you're
you.
feeling this way yourself, but you've put so much on paper and out into the world. If you are wanting to become a painter or dancer or just be a mom for a little, I hope that you give yourself that grace because you've really changed so many lives with your research. And I love your
Thank
podcast, Food
you.
Psych. I listened to the Ozempic episode when you put that out.
Mm.
I was like, I need to know everything about this. And thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming back on the show a second time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great to talk with you again.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Real Pod. If this hit home or helped you in some way, send it to a friend, a teammate, roomie. Share the love, share the realness. New episodes of Real Pod come out every single Wednesday. So make sure you are subscribed to this podcast so you never miss an episode.